And we are now going to move on to our fourth workshop, which is presented by our long-standing Kodai Victoria branch president and choral director extraordinaire, the wonderful Mark O'Leary. Mark has prepared a session titled The Choral Excellence Jigsaw, fitting all the pieces together to create great choirs. And we're really looking forward to Mark's session.
Hello and welcome to this choral session presented as part of the Kodai Australia Virtual Summit. It's my pleasure to be able to share with you this session, which is, after all, about my favourite topic, excellence in choral music. The session is the choral jigsaw, fitting all the pieces together to create an excellent choral performance. Well, we all know what an excellent choral performance looks like. We've been to see those performances where we sit on the edge of our seat and we might get a tingle up our spine. We're completely engaged and maybe we moved a little, a few tears, or we want to jump up and dance along. So we know what it looks like, but what do we need to do to get there? What are the pieces of the puzzle that need to come together? Let's list them first. To create an excellent choral performance, we need skilled singers. We also need a skilled conductor. That skilled conductor also needs to be an excellent teacher. The fourth part of the puzzle is that we need the skilled singers and the skilled conductor to be working with great music. And great music which is well programmed so that we get the most out of that great music. The last part of the puzzle that needs to come together is that these singers need to have excellent performance skills as well and a good understanding of stagecraft. And all of this needs to happen in a context of warmth and support for each other in the choral rehearsal. So let's now look at these areas separately. Skilled singers. What skills do we need singers to have if they're to create an excellent choral performance? Well, obviously they need good vocal skills. If singers are to develop the skills that they need, they may get them elsewhere from singing teachers outside your rehearsal, but the odds are, particularly if you're in a school or in a community choir, that you will need to be the singing teacher. You will need to teach them the skills that they're going to need. So perhaps your warm-up session you need to think about a little more as a singing lesson, where you teach singers about their voices and how to use them to create a relaxed style of singing that is healthy for them and good to listen to. You may feel not well enough qualified to do that the way you would like to, and in that case you might look to get advice and help from others in your environment. The other skills, of course, that singers need are musicianship skills. Musicianship needs to be an important part of each rehearsal. What do we mean by this? We mean that singers need to be thinking about music reading, about intonation, about patterns and structures in music scales, chords, arpeggios, how they fit together to create pieces of music. They need to be orally very aware of what the music's doing and what the people around them are doing. Online programs like Sight Singing School will help singers to develop their sight singing skills outside your rehearsal so that when they come together, you've got more to work with to create a higher level of reading within your ensemble. Skilled singers won't be able to create a great choral performance by themselves. They do need to have a skilled conductor. So what skills do conductors need? Well, there's a very obvious one. They need to know how to wave their arms around. They need a good understanding of gesture and how to control the music, what will happen in the music. But it's not the only skill. Conductors also need to understand music. Many conductors come to this position through study of musical instruments, but they need to understand musical styles. They also need to be able to interpret scores in front of them. find the details in the scores and have the skills then to bring those details to life with their ensembles. Conductors also need to understand their ensembles, whatever the age of their singers is and what their background and experience is. Conductors need to understand what's possible and what's not possible with these ensembles and match that with appropriate repertoire. So as well as having skilled singing and skilled conducting, we need as part of the mix skilled teaching. Teaching is not the same as conducting, and in fact there are conductors who are not very good teachers and there are teachers who are not very good conductors. But for choirs we do need to have both. It's a little bit different to working perhaps with a professional ensemble where the teaching role may be limited. But when we are working with amateur groups, and let's face it, choirs almost certainly are amateur groups, we need to know how to teach those ensembles. So our rehearsals need to be really well structured so that they are full of variety, so that singers stay engaged in the rehearsals. They also need to be structured so that everything that needs to be covered is covered and you get to the performance with everything ready and lined up for a great show. A good teacher will not only know how to structure a rehearsal, but they will know how to teach notes effectively and educationally. We spend a lot of time learning notes, so it's important that this is a challenge to our students and something to be enjoyed and not just a chore. Good teachers will know how to transition between activities so singers don't get distracted by other things going on, perhaps having chats with their friends, but the rehearsal will then flow seamlessly from one activity to the next. Good teachers will know when to push and when not to. They'll know how much repertoire they can give to the choir and the choir still be able to sing it to a high standard. They will know the difficulty of the repertoire that's appropriate for the ensemble. It needs to be hard enough to be a challenge, but easy enough so that it can be performed with great intonation, ensemble, and all of the things that we take for granted when we're listening to an excellent choral performance. So great teaching is also an important part of the jigsaw. But having great singers, great conductors who are great teachers is not enough if the choirs are not working with really great music. Choral philosophy has always been that great music needs to be the core of music education, and that's certainly the case with choirs. There are obviously many reasons for this. The most important one, perhaps, is that through the music they sing, our singers will learn to appreciate a wide range of musical styles. And the best way to learn these things is by learning the very best examples from all of those styles. We won't delve into definitions too much here about what's great music and what's not. It's a bit of a can of worms. But I can say it's not about styles of music. It's not about genres of music. There is great music in all genres of music, just as there is very ordinary styles of music. Not every symphony is a great piece of music. We have to be discerning. Most of us have limited time with our choirs, so we have to choose carefully so that we are only choosing great music for our singers to work with. Part of teaching great music and creating great choral performances is great programming. Not every choir is good at this. Some choirs sing some really excellent music and you can still sleep your way through most of it. So how do we make our programs come to life for our audiences? The first thing we need to consider, of course, is who is our audience? What is their background? What are their needs? What is their musical understanding? It doesn't mean if we have an audience without much musical understanding that we can't sing them great music, but we may have to package it a little more carefully. We may need to choose a variety of music within that program so that we can keep their attention with music that they're not familiar with. We might need to pay attention to giving good introductions to pieces of music, telling the story of the songs, giving translations of things in languages that the audience doesn't necessarily understand. We need to consider the needs of our audience if they're going to have a great choral experience, because they won't necessarily just enjoy music just because it's great. We need to program it so that we can show them why it's a great piece of music. So far, the pieces of our puzzle are skilled singers, joining with a skilled conductor, who's also an excellent teacher, and altogether they are working with great music. But that in itself is not enough to have a great choral performance. We also need singers who are skilled performers and have excellent stagecraft. The first point to make here is that singers need to learn performance skills, and the best way to learn them is by performing. A choir needs to perform and needs to perform regularly. It's through performing that singers will get to understand what they need to do in a performance, and they will learn from the more experienced performers amongst them. Those of you who've been on choir tours will notice how much choirs improve in their performance skills over the course of a tour as they perform the same program over and over. We can't all go on tours, but we can emulate this effect by programming plenty of performances, even if they're not at major events every time. Not all excellent performances are the same. We also need to remember different choirs perform in different ways. There are some choirs who stand in one place, sing their music, and that's what they do, and they do it very well. There are other choirs who use a little movement in their performances. It may be that they just change standing positions every now and then to give the audience a different oral and visual perspective of the music. And there are choirs who like to move a lot. This has become a bit of a trend in choral music, and you will see some performances where every bar has some sort of movement attached to it, either a dance or a gesture or a changing of position. This is all stagecraft, and it can be an important part of creating a great choral performance. For this to happen, singers need to get skills in this, and to get skills, they need to have good training, and they also need to get plenty of practice doing it. So I guess those are all the parts of the jigsaw that need to come together. Skilled singers, skilled conductors, skilled teachers, great music, and singers who are skilled at performance and stagecraft. But there's one more ingredient, which is like a glue that might stick your jigsaw together so that it won't become unstuck. And that's for all this to be happening in a context of encouragement, warmth, and inclusiveness. It's really important that conductors are positive and respectful of singers in rehearsals. We ask singers to give a lot of themselves when they perform, and for that to happen, we need to respect them as performers and as people so that they will give what we want them to give. As conductors, we need to understand why people come and sing with us. What are their needs? They might not be as concerned as we are about providing and producing excellent choral performances. They may have other agendas, and these are valid, and we need to understand them if we're going to create great performances. To finish off then, all of these pieces need to be fitted together if you want to create excellent choral performances. And for this to happen, you need to be pretty good at rehearsal planning. There are many components that need to work together. There are many things that you need to achieve with your singers, skills that you need to impart to them, skills which you need to develop yourselves. So you need to be able to step back, look at the bigger picture, and then draw the pieces together in your rehearsal planning so that everything is covered, every I is dotted, every T is crossed, so that everything will come together, your picture will be complete, and you will be able to create an excellent choral performance.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Mark, and welcome. It's wonderful to have you here with us today, and we're really grateful to you for sharing with us your experience. And absolutely wonderful that we have actually, before we heard from you today, heard in practice everything you've been talking about with your wonderful choir ex Audi. So wonderful to hear them perform. Great to have you with us, and I'll throw to you now if you want to follow up, Mark, with any sort of further questions or comments. Oh, sorry, no, not questions or comments from you. Any sort of wrap up, clarifying bits and pieces, and we'll have a little look at that chat and see whether we've got some questions from our delegates. So over to you, Mark.
Thanks, Joel. It's great to be able to share those thoughts. I guess I know there was a lot of things that went together in that presentation. A lot of things that went together. But I think probably the most important thing for me really is the bit at the end where conductors are able to create a relationship with their singers. So there is this real atmosphere of warmth and communication and community within the ensemble. I think I initially spoke more about this, but then ran out of time and had to cut some things out of the presentation, as I'm sure most people did in their editing process. We can also, I guess to mention, we can get bogged down a little bit. We can get really fixated on really great conducting or choosing the best repertoire. But actually, if we want things to be really excellent, we need to have an overview, really look at the totality of what we're doing, because all the bits work together and it doesn't matter, for example, how good your conducting technique is if your teaching skills aren't good and the music that you're rehearsing is not so great. Doesn't matter how great the music is if it's not put in a concert in a way that people can understand it. So I guess that was the aim of what I was trying to do. So I'm just looking at some questions in here, and a question about examples of poor programming. I've heard so many examples of poor programming. I like to go to the World Symposiums on choral music, and it's a great thing to go if you're a choir if you're a choir conductor. You hear choirs from all around the world who are selected because they're really excellent at what they do, which is performing. But often you hear them singing all of their favourite songs, which are not necessarily crafted together in great programs. So actually the result is not a wonderful performance. Yes, you get great singing, but you can often feel left out of the process and unsatisfied as a performer because you're not getting a crafted program. You're not feeling a structure. You're not feeling as if you're going on any sort of journey. I guess a Stedford's not helpful sometimes in this sense too, because you might choose your three most flashiest pieces that are not necessarily a great way to structure a program together. There's a question: how do I select the order of pieces in the concert programs? I guess I'm looking usually at sections of pieces, so bunches of pieces together that make sense, and that might be with contrasts of tonality, meter, texture. But also, I guess, from beginning to end of concert, at least some feeling as if we're moving somewhere. People's attention needs to be grabbed at the beginning. People get tired of performances about 3/4 of the way through and need another injection there of something. Yeah, I guess it depends on how long the concert is as well. That will affect your programming a lot. Someone's asking, what's the best way to develop your own skills as a conductor? Well, that's easy. Practice, practice, practice. And then when you've had enough of that practice, hopefully with a good teacher to guide you with that. Good books to upskill conducting. There are lots of books, but I would suggest it's more about watching other great conductors, and particularly in rehearsals, watching them in performances. And if you can watch them in rehearsal and performance, I guess you can see how they build on what they do in rehearsals, and then I guess the proof of that, what they do in the performances. There's a question here: is it important to make singers accountable for their learning? How do you do that? I think it is important, but it's also pretty hard. Singers, I guess it's easier in a controlled environment, where all these singers have to do is think about choir. And I guess in my working life, I'm thinking about perhaps my work at Gondwana choirs, where we're away for 2 weeks, and that's what we're thinking about. We're totally focused on choirs. But that's an unusual situation. It's most of the time we're dealing with singers who are distracted and have lots of other things to do in their life. So yes, we try and encourage them to be accountable, to learn their music, to care about the ensemble. It is important, but it's not easy, and people don't always, I guess, live up to their. I don't always do as well as they would like to do in that environment. But then they're just people, and they're not professionals, and we have to understand that and respect that. Interesting question from about how do you deal with singers who come to a choir because they want to learn to be stars and not necessarily team players. I think really once they get into a culture of the rehearsal, they will hopefully understand that it's not just about them. And of course, the beauty of a choir is that a group of people together is going to be able to do something hopefully way more beautiful than one singer can do by themselves. That's why we like choirs, and that's why we like singing together. But I guess too, in a good rehearsal, that singer who wants to be a star might perhaps realise that they've got things to learn, and they might look around and say, oh, actually that person's got these skills. I need to actually listen a bit more, and actually I've got a lot to learn. And perhaps that can help too, just to keep it challenging, so that nobody feels they know everything all of the time. Tips for students learning harmony. I guess what I would say about that is, unless they're very experienced already, a piece of part music and expect them to be able to sing it. We have to start off with simple music, with unison music, then 2-part music, canonic music, music with descants, music with partner songs, and build on skills. We need to do part singing in our warm-ups, in our solfa drills, build on the skill all the time, so that as singers get older, then they will have their ear developed to be able to handle the challenges of part singing, but also hopefully literacy skills, so they can look at a score and know where they're going with that skill as well. As a reflection of the conductor, that's so true. And our work is so judged, so visibly. You go to a performance and you stand up in front and you wave your arms around and the choir sings, and that's very public airing of all your work, good and bad. And I think we have to be prepared to own it when it's not good. We've all do performances that we are not that happy with, and that's important. No point blaming the singers. It's your job. You didn't get it right. You didn't prepare it well enough. You chose music that was too hard. Then we have to own that. That's really, really important. And of course, the other side of that is when it goes really, really well, it's okay. You can feel the joy and think, yes, I led this group of people to create some beautiful things, and I love my relationship with that group and those people, and feel proud that I was able to do that. Watching other conductors, someone's mentioning here, it's so recommended. If you have the opportunity to visit the Gondwana National Choral School, in Sydney for 2 weeks, you get to watch a whole range of conductors. They're all in one spot, all doing different repertoire, working with choirs of different ages. It's such a great way to be able to watch rehearsals and performances from really good conductors. So I would really recommend that. There is a professional learning program that goes along with that. Or you can negotiate to come along as a professional to watch some rehearsals and all of that from watching my colleagues, and it's a fabulous environment. Someone's asking about authenticity in performance and approach to popular music. Look, I think with popular music, you've got to have great arrangement, really great arrangements, and there are great arrangements out there, but they aren't all great arrangements. I think you also need to have a flexibility of sound, not just for classical music, but I personally don't like choirs to have exactly the same sound for every piece. I like to have a different sound for every piece. This will be subtle, of course, because some choir conductors we all have a basic sound that we like, but there's no doubt the difference. If we sing everything with exactly the same sound because we think it's the right sound, then that's pretty tedious for an audience, but it's also not very appropriate musically as well. I think that's probably about all that I've got to say, Joel.
Well, thank you so much, Mark, again for preparing that session for us today and talking and working through some of those questions from our delegates. Again, another session that I think could just go on and on and on, but great to have a little snapshot of your wisdom and experience there, and we really appreciate your contribution to today's event. We hope and look forward to being able to hear some of your choirs performing live, singing together, seeing each other at some stage in the future. So to you, Mark, thank you, and we look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thanks, Joel.